Hello, I'm David Morgan, a doctoral candidate, and this is What Do They Know? A mixed method study of philosophy, politics, and economics. Voters in the United States do not need to understand politics, political philosophies, or economics. They need only be a citizen of the United States, be 18 years of older, be a resident in the district in which they wish to vote, not be prohibited from voting by whatever other reason, and of course they need to be registered. The problem is that people with more information have an advantage over people who lack the same information. Knowledge is power. People with more information can intentionally conflate terms to keep others confused and thus dependent on them for such information. Then, of course, there are those who are legitimately confused. They do not know, but not because they are manipulated. What's critical for the field of business in the concentration of philosophy, politics, and economics it is important for us as scholars to understand accuracy of information or the lack thereof. We as practitioners have a responsibility to properly inform others. If we as leaders can determine what is lacking in voters' understanding, we may be able to properly inform them. This, of course, is the importance and the purpose of information literacy. First, we determine who needs to know and what they need to know, then provide the proper and accurate information to the correct people, in this case, voters. What's important for society here is pretty simple. The purpose of this study is to determine and understand voters' knowledge or the lack thereof. This study will attempt to quantify what voters are missing in their knowledge and qualify why they believe what is false. According to Ostermeyer, 2015, in past elections, the winner of the presidential election was the same nominee that was selected by Ohio's electoral votes. The election results deviated from national average by as little as 1.2 points since 1964. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the vast majority of Cuyahoga County residents, 89.1%, did not continue their education beyond high school, while the U.S. Census Bureau also reported 87.3% of United States citizens did not complete the same level of education. This makes Cuyahoga County very relatable and relevant to the rest of the country. Though quantitative research is generally used for studying economics, the nexus concentration of philosophy, politics, and economics contains two philosophical components. This is a complex project, and according to Wolcott 2019, mixed methods is an appropriate approach for complex projects. According to McBride et al. 2019, sequential explanatory design can be multi-phased or sequential and used for collecting data and useful for mixed methods research. This is a two-phased approach. It will also have two separate groups. One group will be selected to help determine which questions will be used on the questionnaire and how questions will be worded and coded in the interview process. The second group of participants will be selected to take the surveys and participate in the interviews afterward. The data collected from that second group will be analyzed for results for this study. The qualitative paradigm and constructive paradigm expects to derive understanding the way individuals interact with the world around them. Constructivism can also help to understand how individuals see themselves in the world around them. Philosophy and politics are reflective of how people see themselves in the world around them. the qualitative data collected will be converted to quantitative data. The quantitative paradigm, however, post-positivism, tends to conform to the idea that there are some patterns in quantitative data to help develop theories, a hypothesis, etc. They may tend to see these as cause and effects components. Post-positivists expect empirical data to verify or at least point to some sort of theory. Conceptual framework discussion made by Bakir et al. Formulated a construct of this field of organized persuasive communication, or OPC. They also referred to multiple confusing terminologies and differences throughout the study of persuasive communication. Some of these terms carry negative connotations. Some of the confusing terms may be examples of propaganda, fake news, yellow journalism, etc. An assignment I had to take prior to this course has all the students conducting a series of experiments related to their topic. I learned important skills in this area: surveying, interviewing, sampling. The major point I learned was to screen participants by identifying minimum requirements. Wording questions as to not elicit a response from them that is favorable for the survey. And, of course, I learned about sampling. Sampling is different between quantitative and qualitative research. Where in qualitative research, we're looking for more width than depth. Then, of course, in quantitative, we're looking for a calculation to determine what the sample size should be. At some point you reach a point of saturation, where you tend to keep getting the exact same answers again and again. Secondary skills I learned: a unique approach for attracting respondents. In the preliminary experiment that I mentioned before, I had to attract people to participate in the study, but not allow them to know who I was. So I had to come up with an alternative design. I set up a felt board in a very prominent spot with very little instruction. It was a very prominent spot, and I had to get there before anybody else arrived so I could set it up and place myself in a place where I could observe. And of course, there was just one sign that said, "Please participate." What I discovered was amazing. I may have discovered that something is significant in the preliminary experiment mentioned above. It seems that there were very few people who could actually identify philosophical or political or economic terms properly. The experiment with the felt board had no pre-screening, however. This was a problem. I couldn't determine anybody's education level. However, during the interview process, I was able to do this, and I determined that the results were very much the same. Participants were very unlikely to determine the difference between proper terms and terms fed to them by somebody else, and fewer than 50% of the participants were able to identify terms correctly in any of the fields of philosophy, politics, or economics. So I thank you for listening to me today, and I hope to see you again.